Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters through the Silver and Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us in our first episode of 2025. Our sixth calendar year of releasing episodes, Peter.
Crikey jinx.
I know. We have a treat for you this week, listeners, as we kick this year off in grand style. We're doing a three-part story from issues 235, 236 and 237 of The Flash.
Hey!
Issue 235, published on the 27th of May, 1975. And Peter is going to tell us about the cover.
Very, very, very dramatic cover. It's a plain white cover. You've got The Flash, the line of DC superstars, co-starring Green Lantern at the top. And there are four figures on this plain white cover. Lying with his helmet off in the foreground, Jay Garrick, the Flash of Earth 2.
Hooray.
Being punched in the face is Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern of Earth 1.
Gasp.
Being kicked in the bread box, for lack of a better expression, is Barry Allen, the Flash of Earth 1, who's running in from stage left. And the person that is dealing out all this physical punishment is none other than Vandal Savage.
The immortal villain himself. He has some dialogue.
I finished one Flash, but to remain immortal I must kill the other Flash and Green Lantern.
Gosh. There's a caption that reads,
Vandal Savage, wanted, dead and alive.
I really like the starkness of this, because the colours on the heroes' costumes are all just so bright. And so it really pops, and then the red logo against the white. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a Defenders 39 cover, though.
Yes.
As you will find out.
More on that later.
Yes, so we jump in. Our opening splash page, we have a logo at the top saying The Flash, a shot of Barry Allen's headshot also of Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, as we're told. We have guest starring Green Lantern, another headshot of Jay Garrick, who's identified as special guest star of the Golden Age Flash. A small box gives us the credits for this issue.
Story Carrie Bates, art Irv Novick and text Blaisdell, editing Julius Schwartz.
An opening splash image that's a nice, pleasant Carmine-style throwback, if you ask me. See Vandal Savage hiding behind a tree as he watches Green Lantern and the Flash. Flash is running in a circle. Green Lantern's up in the air, conjuring what looks like water from his power ring. And Flash is circling, and there's between them both, mid-air, a huge burning ball of flames. Green Lantern is saying, Flash, unless we extinguish this giant fireball pronto,
we'll never get Iris and Carol out of there alive.
Barry concludes, very dynamic. There is more captioning.
Who is the ominous figure in black with the cruel smile gloating over the deadly crisis confronting Flash and Green Lantern? Who would be diabolical enough to abduct the Scarlet Speedster's wife and the Green Gladiator's girlfriend? Who will stop at nothing to regain the precious immortality he has lost? Who? None other than the villainous Vandal Savage, wanted, dead and alive.
Over the first page and a half, we're with the Flash of Earth 1, who's running home for dinner with his wife, Iris. As usual, Barry Allen is late, mainly because he came across a bank robbery en route and he stopped to help. Not help with the bank robbery, help to deal with the bank robbery. There's a cool panel of Barry changing out of his costume as he runs, arriving home for veal scallopine.
Scallopine.
Is that, obviously that's too fancy for me.
It's Barry's favourite meal.
Yes, apparently. Barry sits down to a set table.
Sorry I'm late, but, does this smell good? You've outdone yourself this time, Madam Chef.
She mentioned that the place is set for Iris as well, but she's not there.
Come on out the kitchen so I can... But a sudden chill ices across the face of the young police scientist in mid-sentence.
Barry's head whirls, he thinks,
something's terribly wrong. I can sense it.
And then there's a massive
Baroom!
And an explosion comes from
the kitchen door.
And then, emerging from the smoke and flames, Barry stands up as he sees
Vandal Savage! I thought you were dead. Then you'd better think again, Barry Allen, though I prefer discussing this matter with you in uniform.
This Vandal gestures at Barry's left hand. Barry's astonished as he notices
he's activating my costume ring by just pointing at it.
Yep, and we see the Flash's uniform expanding and growing on contact with the air. Barry enrobes, and Vandal comments,
Yes, that's much better.
The Flash replies,
Enough of your super scientific tricks, Savage. Why are you here and where's my wife? Answer the second question first. Ah, yes, Iris West Allen. I'm afraid she's gone, old foe, out of your life and out of this world, forever. In other words, she's never coming back.
Flash starts to speed towards him, saying,
Listen, you won't leave this room in one piece unless you tell me what you've done with her. Start talking while you can still breathe.
Flash starts to circle Vandal, moving at great speed, obviously to try and suck the air away from him. Vandal, hands on his hips, unimpressed, says,
Oh, come off it, Flash. Whipping up a vacuum with your super speed might be effective against a common hoodlum, but utterly useless against Vandal Savage.
In fact, Vandal reaches out his left hand and manages to stop Barry in his tracks. The Flash thinks,
How'd he ever get fast enough to grab me at this speed?
And then, with mind-jarring suddenness...
Yes, Vandal has basically completely stopped the Flash in his tracks. Flash is obviously trying to speed away, but he can't move.
Guess I stopped you a bit too quickly, Flash. You're still vibrating with excess super speed energy. So I'll help you work it off.
With that, he throws the Flash backwards. Flash goes flying towards sideboard and a lamp, thinking,
My atoms, gyrating like mad, can't control myself.
The Flash literally starts bouncing off the walls and furniture of his house. We hear Vandal Savage's voice.
Hear those ominous creaks in the house's foundation, Flash? Unless I'm mistaken, the worst is yet to come.
Then, with a massive rumble, the Allen home collapses.
And when the ricocheting comes to a standstill...
The Flash and Vandal Savage standing in the ruins, smoking ruins of what was once the beautiful family home of the Allens.
My whole house, level to the ground.
So the Flash, hand to his head. Vandal, looking very smug and satisfied, hands on his hips, proclaims,
Don't despair, Flash. Things aren't as bad as they look.
And then suddenly, a jump cut. We're back in the dining room with Barry, not dressed as the Flash, but just dressed as himself, sat at the dinner table with his steaming veal on a plate in front of him and a hand on his shoulder saying, Barry, are you okay? Wake up, Barry.
What?
He looks up and sees,
Stacy, I don't understand. Our house is still standing.
Of course it's still standing. Why wouldn't it be? Says their young lodger. Barry gets a thoughtful close-up.
An image of Savage forming in my mind. Does that mean?
Yes, and we see Vandal seemingly hovering in mid-air behind Barry. And Vandal is saying,
Yes, Flash. It means our battle never happened. I provided a mental projection of the fight that would have taken place had we clashed. I prefer not coming to grips with you, yet. Not until I'm fully prepared. And although our battle was imaginary, I assure you, your wife's disappearance is real.
And as the fearsome visage of Vandal Savage fades from Barry's mind...
Barry, looking very discombobulated, rubs the back of his head and says,
I'll be okay in a minute, Stacy. I was, daydreaming.
Now that you're awake, please tell me where Iris is. Her car's in the driveway, but I can't find her anywhere.
Later that night...
Barry opens the door. It's a familiar face as he says,
Thanks for coming in such short notice, Professor.
And it's the familiar face of Professor Ira West, who says,
Poppycock, Barry, my boy, and wipe that worried look off your face. I'm sure there's a logical reason why that daughter of mine is missing.
Ira and Stacy are introduced and hit it off famously.
But it's time now for a shift of scene from the Allen household to a certain apartment in Coast City.
Coast City. It's difficult to think of Coast City without thinking of Green Lantern 46 and all that stuff. And anyway, beautiful rendering here of a tall apartment block amongst a busy cityscape. Hear a couple of voices from inside.
It was heaven seeing you again, Hal, after all these months. Almost like old times.
You said it, lady.
The deluxe apartment of beautiful corporation heiress Carol Ferris, the sometime girl in the life of Hal Jordan.
You see the identifying name on the doorpost telling us that this is the apartment of Carol Ferris, and Carol Ferris and Hal Jordan are having a right big smooch. As Hal is saying, much more of this and I'll start making Coast City my permanent home again.
But scarcely a moment later...
Hal is taking his leave. He's walking off through the corridor, but snaps his fingers, thinking, Oops, I forgot to tell Carol about the theatre tickets I rustled up for tomorrow night. Moves back to press the doorbell, thinking, The show sold out for the next 2 months, but luckily, one of the backers is an old buddy from my test piloting days. He rings the bell, he says, Open up, Carol. Got a surprise for you. But the door opens, and it's not who we expected to see, as a familiar figure says,
And I have a surprise for you, Hal Jordan.
Vandal Savage!
Do come in, we have much to discuss.
That Vandal grabs Hal by the hand, and doing a judo-style throw, flips him over his shoulders to smack him down on the ground. Hey! Exclaims Hal.
but I prefer a conversation with your alter ego, Green Lantern.
And Vandal seems to gesture with his hand, and all of a sudden, Hal, surrounded by a golden glow, oddly enough, is in his Green Lantern uniform. And he says, "An impressive trick, Savage, but now it's my turn to show off." And with that, Green Lantern creates a chair and also a palm, which knocks Vandal backwards into the seat as he gets to his feet, saying, "Carol Ferris has suddenly vanished from this apartment, and my ring will compel you to tell me where she is." Green Lantern gestures again, and a huge fancy bit of scientific equipment has been created next to Vandal. That's very impressive, Hal.
How exciting! Power beaming a lie detector to make sure I'm telling the truth. But the honest truth is, you'll never see Carol Ferris again.
Vandal stands up and manages to ease himself out of the restraints which Green Lantern had created alongside the chair. Green Lantern says, "Great Guardians! He's wrenching my power beam energy apart like it was bubble gum. Stay where you are!" Green Lantern forms a hammer with his power ring. Looks as if he's about to smash Vandal with it, but Vandal, standing up, says,
"Really, Lantern, I know you're upset about Carol Ferris, but is that the very best weapon you can come up with?"
But unexpectedly, as if by magic...
Indeed, things have flipped. Green Lantern's now suddenly sat down in the chair, and the hammer bashes him on the head as Vandal says,
"Well, I guess a hammer will have to do."
Green Lantern thinks, he somehow switched places with me at the last instant.
Next day at the airport outside Keystone City finds the Flash doing his super speed speciality.
Yes, we see a large aircraft, large airplane, a few potential passengers being disturbed by the red and blue whoosh that scoots past them. One man's hat flies off as he says,
"What in blazes was that red blur?"
Another guy says,
"Almost ripped the briefcase out of my hand."
And a disturbed blonde lady exclaims,
"I don't know whether my eyes are blurry or bleary."
But look closely, you'll observe this Flash is not Barry Allen, for Keystone City exists on Earth 2, a parallel world separated from Barry's by a different vibratory rate. Both Earths share many things in common, among them a Scarlet Speedster, but here on Earth 2, he goes by the name of Jay Garrick.
Dynamic shot of Jay speeding across the airport tarmac as another caption reads,
Although a few years separate this Flash from his younger counterpart on Earth 1, they have scarcely diminished his super speed.
We see that Jay is speeding after a very small dark blue light aircraft. He's yelling to the people inside, "You dope smugglers planning to skip town without even saying goodbye?" From inside the plane, one of them yells,
"Faster, Joe, faster, take off!"
And then very helpfully, one of the bad guys inside the plane points out that Jay is, well, he says,
"Look out, he's digging a trench in front of us!"
And then he cries,
"Too late!"
Yep, because the nose has tipped into the plane and...
We're doing an aerial flip-flop on the ground!
Awesome.
But before the plane can land on its back...
Suddenly we see the two bad guys being pulled out of the aeroplane and brought through the air by a burst of green energy. One of the miscreants is saying,
"How come we're flying? This rig ain't equipped with ejection seats."
"It isn't. These seats are courtesy of my power ring." We're told we're continued in the 5th page following, and once again we pass that full page advertisement as all the DC characters, and once again we pass Count Dante to arrive at the top of page 11 and see Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, alighting and bringing the two bad guys down beside him. He turns to Jay Garrick saying, "Here you go, Flash. I believe these two birds are due to be grounded." "For about 20 years, I'd say," says Jay. "But what on earth, too, are you doing here, Green Lantern?"
Instead of an answer, the Scarlet Speedster gets another stunning surprise.
Yeah, he looks round and sees that reddish whirlwind spinning round the plane. The telltale sign of the Flash. Yes, we see that Barry has been spinning round the tipped-over aeroplane. He's now rushing towards Jay with a bag in his hand and saying,
"Look what I came up with after combing every square inch of the plane with super speed. Pure heroin."
Wow, is that the first instance of heroin on the podcast?
Is that the first heroin we've had?
Yes, great panel of Barry opening this quite small brown paper bag by the looks of things and letting the fine white powder run through his hand as the Flash and Hal Jordan look on. How Barry knows that it's heroin, I'm not going to ask.
He's a police scientist.
Yeah, but I know, but you don't know just... There's an episode of The Hulk, I'm sure, as well, when really early when Bix sort of does the whole licks his finger and dips in and tastes it. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, right, of course.
They have a Justice League training course and this sort of thing.
Yes. How to identify heroin was the backup story in Justice League issue 93.
Batman insists everyone does it.
There's a slow dissolve.
Shortly, when the smugglers and their drugs have been turned over to the airport police...
The two Flashes and Green Lantern are walking along as Jay is saying, "How awful. Iris and Carol both victims of Vandal Savage."
The kidnappings were mere hours apart. Green Lantern came to me first because he knew I'd previously battled Savage. But you fought that Earth 2 villain the most, Jay.
Green Lantern says at this point, what's he been up to lately? Jay Flash looks thoughtful and says, well, as you recall in our last encounter with Vandal Savage, and a footnote reminds us of...
Death of an Immortal in Flash 215, or indeed the previous episode of this podcast.
Jay gets a disembodied headshot at the top of page 12 as he continues, the fireball that was supposed to give him immortality backfired and annihilated him on the spot. We thought the Holocaust left Savage dead to the world, but we were only half right. I discovered he had been turned into a phantom, a formless ghost in my world, but evidently, when he visits your Earth, he's very much among the living. Barry and Green Lantern look appalled as Hal says, how about that for a first? A villain who's wanted, dead and alive. Jay resumes, saying, only thing I can figure is that Savage was vibrating into Earth 1 when the fireball struck him on Earth 2, allowing the half of his life essence to bridge the gap to your Earth to survive. That's all I can give you, except for an apology.
Apology?
For not going back with you Earth 1 guys to lend a hand against Vandal Savage. I'm smack in the middle of an even more urgent crisis on my own Earth. And with that, Jay takes a left and rushes off away from Green Lantern and Flash, saying, good luck to all of us. And then in close-up we see Jay thinking as he runs away. Too bad I had to sound so evasive, but I didn't dare tell them about the terrible problem facing me. They wouldn't understand. Especially Barry. Barry and Hal return to Earth 1, a little puzzled at Jay's behaviour. Suddenly, the Flash sees a ghostly vision of Iris which starts to drift away from them. Flash runs after it, and GL is about to use his power ring to stop Barry when he suddenly hears Carol Ferris speak to him from his ring. Both heroes follow the visions into the countryside.
When suddenly...
a voice, seemingly coming out of nowhere, says,
Excellent. As I anticipated, the fastest way to lure you two here was with projected images of your lost loves. That voice!
Vandal Savage, say the two heroes as Green Lantern alights beside Barry. And then they see in front of them, in mid-air, a huge burning ball of flame.
And that fireball, just like the one that killed Savage on Earth 2.
He's got it hung up in the air.
Correct on all count, heroes. And you'll be interested to know what's inside the fireball. Iris Allen and Carol Ferris in a heat-proof air bubble. Trouble is, their precious oxygen is fast running out.
Barry looks panicked. He says,
Lantern, we've got to get up there.
Wait, Flash, this may be a trick. Let me check out that fireball with my power ring.
But when the formidable green beam stabs through the blazing inferno...
Yes, we see what looks like a clear silhouette of someone inside the fireball, and vaguest hint of another one. Green Lantern is saying, darn it, because of the tinge of yellow in the fireball, I can only focus on one of the girls. And a footnote tells us...
Altogether now, due to a necessary impurity in Green Lantern's ring, its beam is ineffective against the colour yellow. Editor.
Hal continues, but it's clear enough. They're both in there. They stand looking up at the fireball as the disembodied voice continues.
Plotting strategy, heroes. I must warn you, every second you hesitate brings your women much closer to a suffocating death.
Green Lantern takes to the air saying, and brings you closer to your own doom, Savage. And the Flash says,
let those girls die and there won't be a corner of the universe you can hide in.
The Flash tries to douse the fireball by sending tons of dirt up into the air by running at speed in a circle below it. Green Lantern corners a power drill to dig into the ground, which releases an underground spring, which only serves to knock out Green Lantern instead of putting out the flames. Next, the Flash runs off and reappears with a pair of fire extinguishers. But this attempt to put out the fireball also fails. Vandal has been mocking their efforts throughout, but suddenly Green Lantern recovers and flies into the air.
Green Lantern, back in action so quickly?
I was never out of action, you dodo.
Never out? I don't understand.
It's the strategy Flash and I plotted, says GL as he flies towards a large tree which has been nearby while all this has been going on. GL alights beside the tree and fires his power beam towards it, as he's saying, I pretended to be knocked out to buy time, while Flash played Fireball Fighter to divert your attention away from me. Time enough for me to concentrate all my willpower on breaking through your super-evolved mental defenses to find out where you really are. With that, Green Lantern's power beam forms into a sort of clamp, which lifts this tree up out of the ground, revealing, hidden inside the trunk, Vandal Savage, who cries,
Aye! My cover exposed!
And before the sinister Savage can launch a counterattack...
GL fires a power beam and strikes Vandal square in the forehead. Flash says,
That's stopping him cold, GL, and now it's question time.
With Savage providing the answers, under the compulsion of my power ring. We then see Vandal, wide-eyed, almost like he's in a trance, and he says,
"Found out. Fireball on your Earth could make me immortal, but only if it were charged with two forms of energy. Green Lantern's power beam and Flash's super speed aura. Lured you both to Fireball using Iris and Carol as bait."
JL breaks off at this point and yells, "Flash! We almost forgot the girls! The air is almost exhausted!"
"Shouldn't have any trouble extinguishing the Fireball now, with Savage's mental powers no longer shielding it,"
says Barry as he grabs the two fire extinguishers, and indeed, thankfully, is able to douse the flames surrounding the Fireball. Tremendous.
But after the Scarlet Speedster reduces the blazing sphere to a hollow, burned-out shell...
Yep, we see the two halves of the shell on the ground split open, with one dark-haired girl inside with a hand to her head, who we recognise, but only one girl inside. The Flash, appalled, says,
"There's Carol, but no sign of Iris. Has Vandal Savage tricked me again?"
Once more, the power ring stabs into the evildoer's mind to extract the truth.
Yeah, great shot here of the beam striking Vandal square in the forehead, and Vandal saying,
"I had planned to kidnap Iris Allen, but she was mysteriously gone when I searched her house that day. So I decided to bluff and take the blame to assure the success of my scheme."
See that Hal is hugging Carol to comfort her as he says, "Easy, Flash. I'm sure we'll find..."
"Find Iris? How? We haven't the slightest clue to tell us where to start looking for her. Good Lord, I don't even know if she's still alive."
Varian panicked close up, and then there's a quick dissolve.
And across the dimensional span that gives way to Earth 2, the world of fellow Flash Jay Garrick...
Yeah, we see Jay Flash standing inside presumably it's his own house or it's some building, rain lashing against the windows, and thinks to himself, "I can't begin to imagine the misery poor Barry must be going through right now. But I can't tell him the truth." Final panel of the story. Jay looks to his left and we see a familiar figure as Jay's thoughts continue. "I can't possibly tell him that I am responsible for his wife's disappearance. He must never be allowed to see Iris again." And indeed we see, standing behind Jay to his left, looking very downcast, Iris Allen.
Why on Earth 1 or Earth 2 would Jay Garrick spirit away his fellow Flash's wife? Don't miss next issue's Nowhere on the Face of Earth as Barry Allen continues his desperate search for Iris. On sale 3rd week in June.
And we now move to issue 236 of The Flash, published on the 19th of June 1975, the day after Paul McCartney's 33rd birthday. Peter's going to tell us about the cover.
We have the Flash at the top, line of DC superstars, guest starring Golden Age Flash and Dr. Fate.
Woo!
For the first time in a long time.
Yes.
There's a room. Iris is there. Barry is in his Flash costume, rushing into the room, and bursting through the wall of the room is a giant green hand, which only appears to have 2 fingers and a thumb.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It is.
A signature tells us that this cover has been brought to us by
Mike Grell.
Iron Mike Grell. Superb.
Yes.
Superb. He's recently killed off Invisible Kid in the pages of Legion of Superheroes, so I'm not talking to him right now. So, our opening splash image, we have The Flash, a small logo at the top, and a box that gives us the credits for this issue.
Script, Carrie Bates. Art, Irv Novick and Tex Blaisdell. Editing, Julius Schwartz.
We see The Flash, Barry Allen of Earth 1, and Iris Allen appear to be standing in Barry's police laboratory. Flash is saying,
"Iris, what's got into you? You're my wife. Why are you pretending you don't know me?"
"Bug off, Flash. How many times do I have to tell you? My name's not Iris, and I'm not married to you or anyone else." And as this little conversation is taking place, hovering or vibrating out of nowhere behind the Flash are 2 massive 3-fingered talons. Gasp.
Look out behind you, Flash! You've covered thousands of miles all over the globe in search of your missing wife. But now that you've found her, you're about to become the victim of a bizarre menace from... Nowhere on the face of Earth!
The story opens with a scene set at Silver Lake near Central City, where the afternoon fun of water skiers, swimmers and boaters is interrupted by a freak tidal wave. The wave has been accidentally caused by the Flash, who is speeding across the lake, caught up in his thoughts. Horror-struck at what he has done, Barry speeds to rescue the patrons and to cancel out the wave before disaster can strike. The bathers and boaters can only speculate at Flash's involvement. The Flash runs off, and we are reminded that he is searching for his missing wife, Iris West, and the Flash worries that she is to be found nowhere on the face of the Earth.
Now let's leave this Earth, Earth 1 that is, and shift our attention across dimensional voids to a parallel world much like our own.
And we see beautifully for the first time in quite a while. You were going to keep track of all of these at one point, weren't you?
Yes, I might go back at some point, if I ever have time.
Yeah, we're going to create a folder of all these images. We should try and do that. We should actively try and do that and then post it when we get to the end.
Yes.
We see the 2 spinning Earths, separated, of course, by the vibrational barrier. The captioning continues.
Earth 2, the home of another slightly older Scarlet Speedster. And, like our own Flash, he can be counted on to be on the move when trouble strikes, ready to tax his fantastic super speed to limits mortal man cannot even imagine.
And we see the J. Garrick Flash rushing to save a commuter train that's falling through a collapsing rail bridge. The rescued travellers cheer and applaud a smiling J. Garrick.
When suddenly, to everyone's astonishment,
the commuters point in wonder. One man yells,
"It's like a miracle!"
Another chap says,
"The train is rising up to the tracks!"
Yeah, that's what we see. The carriage is starting to lift back up into the air from where they'd fallen down. An older man with a moustache says,
"This is too much. The elevated track is uncollapsing back into place."
Another young man says,
"Maybe it's magic."
J. Flash smiles and says, "Definitely magic, considering who's finally joined us." And then one of the other commuters looks up to the sky and says,
"Dr. Fate! He worked a sorcery spell to pull that stunt."
And we see the Wonder Wizard, who we've not seen for a very long time. When did we last see him? Was it the JLA JSA team up with the Freedom Fighters?
I think it might have been.
My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't see him at all last year.
No.
Wow. Dr. Fate alighting beside the Flash, saying,
"I spirited myself here as quickly as I could, Flash. A mere second behind you. Swiftless is your forte, not mine."
"I was only ribbing you, Doc. Keep your helmet on."
"Very well. May we now turn our attention to the original problem you summoned me for?"
"Right. You go on ahead, and I'll catch up to you after I superspeed these commuters aboard the train."
And shortly, in a suburb of Keystone City...
Yes, we see the Garrick family mailbox outside the Garrick family home. And from inside we hear Joan Garrick saying, "I'm glad you're here, Dr. Fate, but where's Jay?"
"Your fleet-footed husband probably ran into another emergency, Joan. He'll be returning momentarily. Meanwhile, I'll begin implementing the plan that Jay and I formulated."
And we see Joan, finally, wearing a purple blouse, pearl necklace, very bouffant-looking blonde hair, and she indicates a door behind her, saying, "I've kept her locked in that room all this time. I feel so sorry for the poor girl. How she must miss her husband."
"It's for her own good, as she must understand by now."
We see that Dr. Fate is opening a hatch in the door so he can look in. Joan says, "Jay and I know that. You know that. But how about the Flash of the other Earth? What's going to happen if he finds out 3 of his best friends are holding his wife prisoner on this Earth?"
"Hopefully it will not come to that, because I am casting a magic spell across the gulf between Earths that will reunite the Flash with his lost love."
We return to Earth 1 as Barry Flash decides to check in with Stacy and the Professor.
That would be Stacy Conwell, the college girl who's been boarding with Iris and Barry Flash Allen, and Professor Ira West, Barry's absent-minded father-in-law, who's been staying over at the Allen house since his daughter's mysterious disappearance.
We see Professor West sat, nice big comfy chair with his pipe in his hand. Stacy's there too. The Professor is saying,
"I remember when Iris was your age, Stacy. She couldn't decide what to major in at college. Let me think. What was her major?"
"Journalism. But don't look so glum, Professor. Maybe there's something in the tube that'll cheer us up. And don't forget, Barry told us he was going to ask the Flash to look for Iris. If anyone can find her, he can." Stacy switched on television, and we see an image of a mustachioed TV presenter standing in front of what looks like a tunnel on the side of a mountain. And helpfully, the TV presenter is saying,
"And in just a few moments, His Honor the Mayor will officially open the new Mount Putnam Tunnel."
Barry's arrived home, back in his own clothes, about to open the door to join the others, and he's thinking,
It feels good to be out of the Flash uniform for a while. Hope Stacy and Professor West are bearing up better than I am.
And we hear the voice from the television saying,
And now here's the mayor.
"A pleasure to be here at Mount Putnam to dedicate this tunnel." Barry sees what's happening on the screen and exclaims in his mind,
Great day in the morning, on the TV screen, in the crowd. Iris!
and we see what looks like Iris indeed standing amongst the crowd in front of the mayor on the telly as he's giving his speech.
And without a word...
Barry rushes back out at super speed thinking,
I'm flashing it to Mount Putnam.
"Aren't we all?" Professor West says at this point.
What's that you said, my dear?
Stacy's looking down at television and she's saying, "In the crowd, just before they switched the camera, I thought I saw..."
And on the street outside the Allen home...
A motorist speeding along in his car has to push on the brakes as he thinks,
Gotta stop the car.
yeah, with a screech of brakes because we can see in the foreground Barry Allen activating his costume ring and speeding off. The man gets out of his car, looks around, scratches his head thinking,
Huh? I could have sworn I saw a man running in front of me. I guess it was my imagination.
Not imagination, but a split-second glimpse of the fleet-footed Barry Allen pressing the secret compartment of his ring that releases an instantly expanding scarlet uniform.
See the Flash speeding through the countryside towards the Putnam Tunnel. He arrives in time to hear the end of the mayor's speech. And it's gratifying to see the voters' highway taxes put to such good use. And the Flash speeds into the crowd, grabs a woman in a green outfit, and rushes off, thinking,
Got her! It's Iris, all right.
You hear the mayor continuing, when every tax dollar is so vital in these times of inflation.
And out of earshot of the crowd,
Barry sets the woman down on her feet, saying,
Iris, darling, you don't know how worried I was. Not knowing where you were almost drove me out of my mind.
Well, something's driven you there, obviously. For one thing, my name isn't Iris. And if this is your cute way of picking up a girl, Flash, it won't work with me. This woman looks very annoyed.
Listen, I know my own wife when I see her. Now stop playing games and tell me why.
Can it, Flash? And take a look at that tunnel. The lady, is she Iris? Is she not? She points backwards. For the mayor is still continuing with his speech. He's saying, so it's with a great deal of pride that I... But then he pauses because he looks and sees, coming out of the tunnel, is a huge, enormous, disembodied yellow talon. There's no other way of putting it. It's like a middle finger and maybe two thumbs. It's terrifying. The mayor cries, run! Everybody, out of here, fast! Someone in the crowd yells,
What is that thing?
Someone else says,
If it's somebody's hand, I'm not waiting to meet the rest of them.
The Flash speeds off back towards the tunnel, saying,
Stay put, honey, while I dispose of this three-fingered terror.
And Iris, if it is her, humps to herself, saying, Who's the worst terror? I wonder. The Flash arrives at the mouth of the tunnel, and the giant disembodied hand seems to be gesturing towards him. Flash is thinking,
That giant hand seems to be beckoning me to come on in. That's an offer I can't refuse.
next instant...
yes, with a
Swat!
the hand slaps itself down to try and flatten the Flash. Thankfully,
Whew. Now I know how a fly feels. If I hadn't vibrated my atoms into the ground a split second ago, I'd be flat on my face, not to mention the rest of my body.
yes, we see that Barry has vibrated and dropped under the surface of the road. Phew.
Springing up out of the ground, the fastest man alive tries a different tack.
Barry pops back up and starts speeding off over the grass, thinking,
When the direct approach fails, then hit him with the old reliable attack from the rear.
and he speeds round the mountain to come round the other side of the tunnel.
Streaking in through the other end of the tunnel should give me the advantage of surprise this time.
However, he hasn't anticipated another disembodied yellow hand. As he speeds into the tunnel, Flash thinks,
I couldn't have been more mistaken. Not only is the giant hand ready and waiting for me up ahead, it's developed into a matching pair that is me hemmed in at both ends. I've sure been suckered into this one.
and he looks back and forth between them when all of a sudden, radiating waves of green energy burst from the middle fingers of each hand, striking the Flash, and he thinks,
Ugh! The hands, setting up a running flow of deadly energy between them, sapping all my strength. Too weak to vibrate through side of mountain. And I'd never survive a direct running charge with these energy streams coming at me. Only one chance left. And it means spiraling myself against the curved walls of the tunnel again and again, much like a bullet that is spiraled through the bore of a rifle, accelerating my super speed so much I have a good chance of slipping through those lethal fingers.
and the Flash manages to get out of the way of the passive green energy and starts speeding and circling around them, rifling himself back towards the entrance of the tunnel, and we see he's successful. He comes spiraling out, and he thinks to himself,
Time to put on the brakes.
he rests his speed, coming up, and he's thinking,
Now what? I've got to resume hand-to-hand combat, but without a clue as to what this thing is, how can I defeat it?
the Flash looks back into the tunnel now, what he's just been battling, and he's stunned.
Great Scott! The hands are gone! Not a sign of them anywhere!
As he tries to figure out what's going on, the mayor and some of his entourage approach the Flash, with the mayor saying, Yes, it happened just after you shot out of the tunnel, Flash. Both of those monster hands up and vanished.
Then all I can do is the same, Mr. Mayor,
And then he thinks.
and whisk that errant wife of mine home.
The Flash then speeds off, seeing no sign of Iris. He surmises that she must have hitched a lift, so he checks all the vehicles on a busy highway until he quickly finds Iris in what looks like a Volkswagen van, and he whisks her away.
Iris, why do you keep running away from me?
Flash, why do you keep calling me Iris? Can't you get it through your thick skull that you're not my type?
Insults will get you nowhere, darling. I'm going to prove once and for all you're Mrs. Barry Allen.
And we see them speeding across the countryside towards the city, arriving at police headquarters. There's an older policeman standing outside filling in a notepad, and the lady yells, Help! Police!
Don't strain your lungs, sweetheart. We're moving too fast to be seen or heard.
And in the privacy of the lab, Flash uses his police scientist Barry Allen, a most dazzling display occurs.
Yes, we see that at high speed, the Flash is using all of the equipment in the laboratory to try and figure out who this person is. We see a machine labelled as voice print. There's another station labelled as fingerprints. We see something in the background about photographs. There's a clicking sound effect, obviously, because the Flash has just taken the woman's photograph as she says, "I've had it up to here with you, Flash. Will you please stand still?" The Flash holds up fingerprints and a voice print out, and is that a photograph of some ears?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh. And he says,
There, how's that? At super speed, I just took your fingerprints, voice print reading, and a photograph of your earlobes. 3 indisputable tests that verify you are indeed my wife.
"This is insane. I've never been engaged, let alone married."
Then how do you explain this wedding ring?
Barry holds up Lily's hand, and then suddenly his expression changes and he says,
Good gosh, how dumb could I be?
Suddenly, one of the giant yellow hands bursts through the lab window. Flash grabs Iris and rushes out of the building, commenting that the hands had gone invisible so they could follow him in secret. Reaching the outskirts of the city, they're cornered by another hand. The Flash throws Iris into the air and then at speed manages to bury the hand in dirt and soil before catching Iris. There are suddenly a pair of the hands chasing the Flash. They start rushing off underneath some telegraph wires. The girl claims, "They're about to get us again. If this is what your wife goes through, no wonder she left."
Don't fret, I'll get you to safety.
"I was safe before you came along." And with that, to try and get away from the hands, the Flash runs up the side of one of the telegraph poles.
So swift as the fastest man alive, his speed can boldly defy even the laws of gravity.
They then start running along telegraph lines, but one of the hands grabs the pole and pulls it up out of the ground.
Hold on tight and don't look down.
"If I live through this, I never want to see another superhero." We then cut to somewhere else, and we see an image of the Flash and the woman with the telegraph wire starting to collapse underneath them, and it's being projected in a crystal ball. A voice is saying, "I realise our primary objective was to keep Barry occupied, Dr. Fate, but this seems a bit extreme."
Granted, but at least for a while we've kept him from searching for his wife. Wait a second, reader. If you're confused, don't be. You've simply made a transition from Earth 1 to Earth 2, where Dr. Fate's magical crystal ball is providing a front view of the Flash in action.
Yes, we see a wider shot here with Dr. Fate near the camera. J. Garrick Flash looking into the crystal ball with Jay saying, "The magical spell you cast to his Earth certainly brought us the extra time we needed."
Extra time which alas has proved to no avail, for none of my sorcery has been able to cure the real Iris Allen of a terrible affliction.
And the camera pulls back to see our Iris Allen floating in mid-air. As she hovers, a piece of scientific apparatus is casting a beam over it. She seems to be getting scanned somehow. The Flash replies to Dr. Fate saying, "You mean she must stay away from her husband? Forever?"
Precisely. Should the pestilence she is carrying in her body even come near the unique superspeed aura that surrounds her husband, the resulting cataclysm cannot be imagined, let alone predicted.
Poor Iris. Where can she go? Surely not back to Earth 1.
It is a problem. Meantime, I will undo the magic spell with which I kept your fellow Flash distracted. At that instant, on Earth 1,
we see Barry Flash and the woman he was carrying dropping to the ground. The large yellow hands have vanished. Flash is saying,
"So much for my high wire act, Iris. Now it's back to the ground again."
He exclaims,
"Iris?"
And we get a good look at her to see that she doesn't look like Iris at all. She has long red hair instead of brown hair. Very different face. And Flash, shocked, says,
"Good gosh, you're not my wife at all."
"Wife? What are you saying? I can't seem to recall anything that's been happening."
And on Earth 2,
Dr. Fate and Flash standing at the crystal ball with Dr. Fate saying,
"What are you waiting for? Now that I've removed the spell which made that girl a double of Iris Allen, you can turn off that realistic menace you provided to keep Flash busy."
"I provided?" says Jay, pointing. "But I thought the menace was your doing."
A chilling realization ices the voice of Dr. Fate as he ponders his crystal ball and seeks an explanation.
Brilliant artwork here as Dr. Fate manages to look thoughtful.
"I see it is I who am at fault. Casting a magical spell across a dimensional void between Earths has spawned an undesirable side effect. Those lethal mystical hands. And even I cannot counteract them. I'm afraid the Flash is on his own now."
And we're back on Earth 1 with Barry Flash. As the pair of yellow hands reappears in the distance, he starts rushing towards them thinking,
"That girl I thought was Iris has me thoroughly confused, but I'll never get a chance to figure things out unless I dispose of that 6-fingered nightmare."
Flash rushes towards him, starts to circle round the hands thinking,
"An idea just occurred to me. Certainly dangerous and probably a little foolish, but it might just work. I'm counting on the hands to be a split second slower than I am. My timing has to be perfect.
We see Barry running between the two hands.
But when the Monarch of Motion attempts to race through the deadly fingers...
There's a massive clap as the hands close shut on him. Flash thinking,
they got me! Almost. I suckered the hands into going for an after image caused by my super speed, and as I hoped, the hands came together with so much force they locked in a death grip that's draining whatever mystical energy spawned them, as they snuff each other out of existence.
yes, fantastic. We see the yellow hands clasping each other, and they start to dissolve in a big cloud of purple and pink smoke. Flash thinks to himself,
The realization that they never came together before gave me the idea.
amazing.
That night on Earth 2, the missing wife of the Flash is about to embark on yet another journey.
We see Iris standing, the real Iris, standing with J. Garrick and Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is saying,
Yes, Iris Allen. I will magically transport you 1,000 years into the future of your Earth.
my parents live there, Dr. Fate. They're all I have left. Dr. Fate gestures and Iris is surrounded by a little cloud of white smoke as she continues, maybe the advanced science of 2975 can find a cure that will enable me to rejoin Barry. And as she starts to fade out, J. Flash says, I hope so, Iris, for both your sakes.
But meantime, on Earth 1, a distraught husband has pulled out his own time-travelling aid, the Cosmic Treadmill.
Yes, long time no see, the Cosmic Treadmill. Barry is reassembling it and he's adjusting the controls. He's thinking,
There, I set the time clock for AD 2975. The future era where Iris's parents live is my last hope. If she doesn't turn up there, but I don't want to think about that.
with that, Flash steps onto the Cosmic Treadmill and starts running.
A man and wife, separated by time and space, finally heading on a collision course that will bring them together in a union that could destroy all time and space. Be here next issue for the startling conclusion of Flash's quest for his wife.
On sale 3rd week in August.
And now we reach the conclusion in issue 237 of The Flash, published on the 21st of August 1975. And Peter will tell us about the cover.
At the top, The Flash, the line of DC superstars, solo starring Green Lantern, but we're not concerned with him. We are in a future landscape, a familiar future landscape. Central City of the 30th century. And Central City then is basically a big giant tower. Futuristic, kind of almost Roman looking, to be honest. Retro Roman.
Yeah, as I was saying in the preparation for this, I didn't realise until reading the story that I've owned this comic for, 30 odd years, as usual. I didn't realise that, I don't think I'd read it before, naughty David, that was supposed to be Central City on the cover. I just thought it was some kind of, were they visiting the Leaning Tower of Pisa or something?
There we are. Well, it's certainly leaning because it's been struck by lots of energy bolts from the sky. Is it lightning? Is it something more dangerous and sinister? And it's crumbling and starting to break apart.
Oh dear.
And in the foreground, we have Iris. She's being dragged apart by two different people. On the left, it is Professor Zoom, the Reverse Flash, who says,
Let go of her, Flash, or Earth dies.
and pulling the other side is the Flash, and he's saying, I don't care, my wife is coming with me. And at the bottom, we have a caption that says,
The 1,000-year separation.
Yes, a bit of a spoiler having having him on the cover.
certainly is.
Oh well, not to worry. So listeners, if you've been wondering who's been behind everything that's been going on, you might be able to work it out. Our opening splash image echoes the front cover, although Central City is a bit more recognisable. At the top we have a small The Flash logo and a caption that gives us the credits for this final adventure.
Story, Carrie Bates. Pencils, Irv Novick. Inks, Frank McLaughlin. Editing, Julie Schwartz and Bob Rozakis.
Interesting. So very similarly to the cover, we see the tower that's Central City 2975 being struck by blue bolts of lightning. We see Iris being lifted off her feet by both Flashes, with the Reverse Flash saying, Let go of your wife, Flash. Your very touch is destroying the world. Iris cries, Reverse Flash is right, darling. From now on, I'm his, not yours. Barry looks appalled as the captioning reads,
It was a war of wills between the fastest man alive and his nefarious counterpart, the Reverse Flash. The enemy action had begun weeks ago, stacking all conceivable odds in the villain's favour. And the prize was a beautiful woman who has been mercilessly cut off from her super-speeding husband by the 1,000-year separation.
And the story begins properly on page 2 with a caption.
Gaze into the crystal ball with Dr. Fate and the Flash of Earth 2.
And immediately we've got a footnote that reads,
A parallel Earth in another dimension.
yes, and we see the hand of Fate. I wanted to say that for a long time. Hand of Dr. Fate pointing at the crystal ball as he says,
It's just as we expected.
The Flash has set the dial on his cosmic treadmill for the year 2975.
Yes, that's what we see picking up from the end of part 2. We hear Jay Garrick's voice saying, so he can time travel into the future and find his missing wife. And then through the crystal ball, we hear Barry's voice as he says,
Here I come, Iris. Not even 1,000 years can keep us apart.
And then we cut back to Barry in his room on Earth 1 with the cosmic treadmill set up and him starting to run, saying,
Over 2 weeks since Iris disappeared. If I don't find her with her parents in the 30th century, I won't know what to. Eh?
And he looks round because nothing very much seems to be happening. He continues,
Something's wrong. I've been running for more than an hour. My super speed vibration should have transported me forward through time, but nothing's happening.
Yes, we see a clock on the wall showing how long he's been there. That's very odd. We then cut back to Earth 2 as the Jay Garrick Flash is saying, Your spell is working, Dr. Fate.
Yes, Flash. Suspending the treadmill in time was the only way to keep it from working for your fellow speedster.
What's this? Flash's Earth 2 friends conspiring against him? But is even the magic of Dr. Fate enough to hold back our determined monarch of motion?
Yes, we're back with Barry on Earth 1 again as he's saying,
There's only one idea left to try. Since I can't go forward or backward, I'll move sideways.
Yes, and we see his legs moving at great speed and he drifts off the side of the treadmill.
As I guessed, the treadmill is malfunctioning. And since the machine already made my atoms gyrate at the proper frequency, I can vibrate into the future without it.
And then we cut back to Jay and Dr. Fate as Barry out of existence. Jay cries, Flash found a way to outwit us. Do something, Dr. Fate.
There is only one thing left to do, my friend.
Dr. Fate gestures at his crystal ball. We cut quickly.
And in the central city of 2975 AD, home of Fran and Eric Russell, the future base parents of Iris Allen.
Yes, and we see the tall structure of Central City as it appeared in the future, and as it appeared in the story The Flash the Two-Timer, which we covered some time ago, and of course that Justice League story where it popped up as well.
Yes, recently.
You'd almost think, listeners, that we planned this sort of stuff. We see a futuristic car speeding across a futuristic highway, and inside this futuristic vehicle we hear Iris Allen's voice. I know you and Dad are worried about me, but I had to leave Central City. It's only a matter of time before my husband super speeds across the years to look for me here. And since Dad's science council was unable to find a cure for my affliction, I must give in to him. Accept his outrageous offer, for the sake of my world and yours.
Whose outrageous offer? The answer must be held off a bit longer, reader, because of a sudden crimson-clad complication.
Listeners, we're going to have a 30-minute break here whilst we all try and work out who could have made the offer that Iris is talking about. I wonder if the cover of the splash page might have given it away. But suddenly, yes indeed, Iris sees rushing towards the car a familiar red figure as she points and says, Oh my gosh, it's Barry! He found me! Quick, Dad, turn around! He mustn't get near me! At this speed, how can we stop him?
Iris, at last! It's really you!
As the Flash rushes up to the car,
Suddenly, spanning a gulf of time and dimensions, a mystic bolt strikes the Sultan of Speed. A bolt which instantly tells him all which has occurred.
yes, we see the Flash being struck. Looks like he's basically been struck in the head by a bolt of lightning. Shot in the back over a matter of $80. The captioning continues.
How Dr. Fate's crystal ball revealed the grimmest of news.
Yes, we get a nice little heavily boarded sequence of flashback panels here as Dr. Fate looks into his crystal ball and thinks,
By the powers of Ishtar, the future is beset by dark clouds, an ominous omen that a neighboring universe is in jeopardy.
How a consultation with the Flash of Earth 2 led to a startling conclusion.
we see Dr. Fate and Jay in conversation. Fate saying,
There can be no mistake. Iris Allen is the reason for Earth 1's impending doom.
If my fellow Flash goes near her, it'll mean a total destruction of all time and space.
How Jay Garrick whisked the unknowing Mrs. Allen to Earth 2 with not a millisecond to spare.
Yes, and we get a flashback to the first chapter of the story, where we see Jay removing Iris just as Barry is about to sit down for his veal. Gosh.
And how the two Justice Society members tried in vain to rid Iris's body of a lethal energy flux, which would detonate on contact with the Flash's super speed aura.
Well, that's new information. Yes, we see Iris stretched out on a couch, banks of scientific equipment all around her, as Dr. Fate is saying,
We have failed to help Iris. We must return her to her parents' era.
and Jay concludes, and if the advanced science of the 30th century cannot cure her, Barry must never see his wife again. And we arrive at the top of page 5, with the Flash still speeding towards the Russell family car. From inside the vehicle, Mrs. Russell yells, Somebody stop him! Mr. Russell says, Wait, Huh? He vibrated himself under us at the last second. And indeed, Flash vibrates down into the ground and then out the other side behind the car, thinking,
If not for Dr. Fate back in 1975, I'd have grabbed Iris, and the universe would be blowing apart this very instant.
Barry pulls up and then looks around back towards Central City, where he sees that it's suddenly being struck by bolts of blue lightning that are coming out of the sky, and it seems as well, even out of the ground. He thinks,
Looks like I wasn't quite fast enough. I must have come too close to Iris, triggered the destruction. And Central City is right in the middle of it, about to crack apart.
We see a massive tear has developed right up the front of the building. Good grief. Central City does get a hard time of it in the future.
It does, yeah.
Flash starts to run off, thinking,
If I've set off a chain reaction, nothing can save the tower. But that won't stop me from trying. First, a little super speed mining.
We see the Flash running. He seems to be digging a trench into the ground.
Then I make like a human cement mixer.
We see him now rushing towards Central City with a whole slurry being drawn along behind him.
Add a quick delivery of fresh concrete to shore up the tower's weakened foundation, while my super speed vibrations get me out of the way of my cement express.
Tremendous, yes, with a plop sound effect. We see that Barry has managed to deposit all of this quick, fresh concrete that he's made out of almost nothing around the foundations of the building, shoring it up.
Now some dashes of my homemade concrete to fill in the cracks of the tower, and Central City is saved. Provided I can stop the...
Then, without warning, as suddenly as the Holocaust began...
Yeah, all the flashes of blue lightning that were still striking the tower have stopped. The sky is clear. Nothing is happening. The Flash looks around saying,
Huh? Everything is calm again. How did...
You can thank me for that, Flash. And then, in a very unimpressive reveal, it has to be said, this should have been a full page if you ask me. We see him standing tall and lean and doing something weird with his outstretched fingers. The Flash's opposite number.
You! My longtime foe, Professor Zoom!
Otherwise known as the Reverse Flash, and soon to be known as the new husband of Iris Allen.
Still trying to take her away from me, Zoom? No way! If you so much as touch Iris, I'll...
You'll do nothing, Flash. If you want to keep the world in one piece, remember, you already set off its destruction. Destruction which I held back with these hands. For only I know the secret of arresting the deadly chain reaction set off by your aura and the energy flux in Iris. And for that, I've asked the price your wife has agreed to pay. Iris and her parents have got out of the car. They're walking towards the two speedsters. Iris sniffs and says, It's true, Barry. Zoom has promised the Earth will remain safe throughout time if I marry him.
But you're married to me.
Sure she is. In 1975. But those old laws don't apply 1,000 years later. See that Zoom is now kneeling down and opened a case that's on the ground and lifting out some sort of gold headband and what looks like some clothes. He stands up, starts circling Iris at speed, saying, Don't mind me, Iris. I'm just adorning you at super speed with a wedding gown I've fashioned for you. She's revealed in the next panel with Zoom commenting, Exquisite, which Iris says, Don't you see, Barry? Zoom has been planning this for months. Ever since the day he tried to steal me away by impersonating you. And an asterisk takes it to a caption that reads,
As told in Flash 233, the deadly secret of the Flash, or indeed the previous episode of this podcast.
That's correct. Zoom continues, You won that one, Flash, but I had enough time to plant the seeds of the lethal energy flux in your wife's body with vibrations. And we see, in this little flashback, Professor Zoom twisting his left arm in Iris's direction as he thinks, A few weeks from now, the energy level in her body will reach a critical state. And then Iris is mine, even if the Flash turns up alive. We're back in the present, well, the future of 2975. As the Flash says,
I can guess the rest. You used your super science to plant that doom omen in Dr. Fate's crystal ball, knowing he'd snatch Iris and try to cure her, even though there was no cure.
Precisely. But I wanted you to find that out for yourself. Call it proof positive. There's no way you can stay married to Iris. And now that you're thoroughly convinced, the lady and I are going to be wed in Earth East, where a minister and the proper marriage documents are waiting. And with that, Zoom pulls Iris close and then lifts her off her feet and rushes off, the veil and her bouquet trailing in the wind. Flash cries,
Iris! My beautiful Iris!
At that point, Mr. Russell says, I know how you must feel, son, but you did all you could.
But not enough, Dr. Russell. Nobody's safe as long as that madman holds the fate of the world at his fingertips. If only I knew how... Wait a second. Fingertips. That's it. That's his secret.
He rushes off with Russell saying, Flash?
You two better take cover. And remember, as we sometimes say in the 20th century, it's always darkest before the dawn.
A slow dissolve, or maybe a quick dissolve given the circumstances.
Meantime,
Professor Zoom speeding along carrying Iris and he's saying, For years I've dreamed of our wedding day, dear Iris. But Iris looks around and notices, well, it's getting dark overhead, she says. Something's wrong. The sky.
Next instant,
Iris has vanished from Zoom's hands. He's surprised. He says, Huh? What happened to my Iris? And then you see the Flash coming to a halt with Iris in his arms, and he proclaims,
My Iris, Zoom.
"You're a fool, Flash. Your presence has set off the worldwide Holocaust again. The world is doomed. If I can't have Iris, nobody can." And indeed, that's also why the sky is dark. We can see the blue lightning bolts striking the earth in the background as we see the Flash starting to circle Professor Zoom at speed, saying,
Somehow, I knew you'd be a bad sport, Zoom.
Professor Zoom tries to counter by obviously running at speed as well. Last couple of panels of page 9, we see the two Flashes running at super speed, decking punches, and as Iris watches, she thinks, "So many images of super speeding Flashes, I can't tell where the real ones are."
But quick as a spark, the monarch of motion becomes a whirling human tornado with fists flying.
Yes, as the lightning bolts continue to strike and echo in the background, the Flash stops in one spot and starts whirling, circling at great speed.
Nothing like the process of elimination to eliminate a nuisance.
Yes, and Zoom tries to speed towards him, but gets caught by a spinning fist and goes flying into a handy cactus, crying, "Oof!" The blue lightning bolts continue to strike the earth as Iris cries, "Oh, Barry! The world has only seconds left!"
Plenty of time for me to work a special magic of my own.
With that, the Flash stands and starts gesturing with his fingers. The sky clears. The lightning bolts stop. Iris says, "Everything's normal again, just like before. How did you ever?"
As Zoom said, it's all in the hands. At first I thought his fluttering hands were a diversion, but then I realized he was actually sending ultra vibrations your way that neutralized the lethal energy flux in your body. So all I had to do was duplicate the frequencies. A few more vibration treatments and your cure should be permanent.
Barry takes Iris in his arms, lifts off the little veil that the Reverse Flash had made for her, and there's a slow dissolve. The caption reads,
Epilogue.
We see Iris and Barry standing next to the cactus. And there's a sentence I never thought I'd say this morning, so I obviously hadn't read ahead. Iris is saying, "Zoom is gone, vanished, just like he did the last time you defeated him back in 1975.
I didn't expect him to hang around. If the universe were to be annihilated, he must have prepared an escape for himself.
Then that means
He'll be back again. We can count on it. But I'll worry about that when the time comes. And right now...
Yep, Iris and Barry have a big old smooch as their parents arrive in the car. Iris' mum can be heard saying, "We've caught up with them, Eric, but I don't think we should interrupt their reunion." It's the best of all endings, Fran. A happy one. We then cut to Earth 2 to see J Flash and Dr Fate seeing the happy couple embracing Dr Fate's crystal ball as J Flash says, "Judging from the scene of your crystal, Dr Fate, the future of the universe has been spared."
Thanks to the Flash, fastest man on all Earths.
And a final slow dissolve.
And shortly in Central City, 1975...
Yep, we're back in the Allen household. Barry's there, Professor West is there, Stacy's there. The Professor says,
"Daughter, you're home safe."
Stacy says, "We can hardly wait to hear what happened, Iris." Iris says, "In due time, Stacy. But first, Barry's been waiting for his favourite veal scallopine dinner for 2 weeks." Then she thinks, or 1,000 years, depending on how you look at it. And everyone smiles as she serves up, and a small caption reads,
The end.
Next issue on sale during the 4th week in September.
Well then, I'm really glad that we did The Flash, His Wife is a Two-Timer, and the story from 233.
Yes, it was our long-term goal.
It works to plan ahead, doesn't
Yes.
it? That was good. I mean, one thing we're going to try and do, listeners, as we go further into the Bronze Age and near the modern age, there are going to be more and more multi-part stories. We're going to try and sort of, following the sort of template we did with that Black Hawk episode a few years ago, we're going to try and set the template of part summary, part reading. I think the balance in this one was okay, just so that we're not sort of bogged down doing week after week of multi-part stories, because, you know, we would like to finish this podcast before we reach our 60s.
I like to finish it before I die.
Yes.
That's fine. I don't want to finish it after I die.
No, that would be pointless. That was a bit of an epic. It was nice to see Dr. Fate and Jay Garrick, because we haven't, as I think we remarked in the end of the year episode, there hasn't been a lot of Earth 2 recently. So it was,
very true.
It was nice to see them being involved. Nice to have Vandal Savage pop back, even though he kind of popped out again very quickly.
Yes, I mean, it's all set up for Vandal to be the big bad
Yeah.
right at the start, and it's like typical Carrie Bates. Nope, bait and switch, there you go. Although the surprises kind of end, especially in the third part, when you've got Professor Zoom on the front cover and the splash page.
Yes.
It's like that Flash Thinker story.
229. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Legopolis.
Yes, the Thinker was the secret villain behind all of it, but he was revealed in the splash page. It's like, what? So it's not the Ragdoll who's the bad guy? Right, okay, we'll just see how it plays out then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it fully justified 3 episodes, to be honest. three comics. It was a nice sort of fun run around. Nowadays, it'd probably be decompressed to the extent that it played out over a whole year.
Yeah, possibly. Certainly at least a 6-issue story.
Yeah.
You know?
It was interesting to have some slight tie-ins to what was happening in the Hal Jordan strip, but that you hadn't seen Carol Ferris for a while.
Yeah, true.
That was quite interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about Jay and Dr. Fate going behind Barry's back.
Yeah, well, they are trying to figure it out in their own way, trying to cure Iris so that it's not going to have the effect. So you can understand it from that point of view.
Yeah.
But having said that, Barry could be helping them.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
They could have maybe all just got together or maybe they were worried about Barry being too emotional or...
Possibly. That makes
something.
sense. Yeah, hence the fake Iris. Yeah.
Yes, that was a weird diversion as well.
Yeah.
Who was she? What's her story? When we read our DC comic...
I'm glad they gave her that bit of dialogue saying I can't really remember what happened because basically Barry told them exactly who he is and who he's married to and everything. It's hilarious.
I can imagine an issue of Astro City dealing with that girl.
Yeah, definitely.
Or someone similar.
Yeah. It's strange that Hal Jordan didn't stick around. I was like, oh, if I found Carol, that's fine. I'll leave you to it. It's okay.
I suppose he probably had pressing matters to deal with in his own backup strip.
Yes, maybe well have done.
You can say.
He was probably, this is trucking era or his toy salesman era. His trucking era, I think it is.
Okay. Right. I can't remember.
Because a hotshot test pilot should be an insurance agent or trucker or whatever. Of course.
Yeah.
One thing that struck me, which I thought was really funny, is Reverse Flash changing Iris's outfits.
Oh God, that's really creepy.
Also, the outfit he's put her in is very, very, very reminiscent of the Golden Gliders outfit.
So it is. That's
fair.
The
kind of like orange mini dress sort of thing.
I can see that, definitely.
Did those two ever meet? I don't think they did, actually.
He's a bit of a creep, the Reverse Flash, isn't he?
A bit of a creep?
Yeah.
He's the ultimate creep. My goodness.
Listeners, we all know the ultimate end for some of the characters in these stories we've done today. Like, we know what happens to Barry in Crisis. We're not going to spell it out right now. We know what's going to happen to Iris in about 40 issues' time. We've said in the past, the story of the Silver Age is very much Barry Allen.
Yes,
so I'm glad that we've done these other arcs, these other issues that tie into this. Yeah. And when you think back on them all, it is all very sort of satisfying. And in that issue, Jaylee, I think it was during the Starbreaker story when they're in the future briefly and they see, it's nice that there's this continuity. I mean, remember when I read that letter from Amazing World recently where Rich Morris, he was complaining about the lack of continuity. The continuity shown through these Flash stories at this point is very impressive.
Yes, absolutely.
Unlike a lot of stuff, like as we say, is Plastic Man alive or dead? What's going on with Dead Man? Who is this Spectre anyway?
Yeah,
so it's nice that some people are paying attention. Going back to the Reverse Flash, he is the worst, and I think that is the worst way of getting rid of the Reverse Flash I've ever seen.
Yeah,
just punching him so he falls into a cactus. Are you sure he wouldn't have been vibrating whilst he was moving at speed so that he would have vibrated through the cactus? Or are you going to say that there's something in a cactus that counters super speed, which is why Barry did it?
No, there was that old thing, remember that was mentioned before of the Flash and Reverse Flash when they're in a different time period, they've got internal vibrations that keep them in that time period.
Of course.
So if he's not unconscious, he'd automatically go back to his original time period.
So so that's why he vanished, right? I've forgotten about that. You're right. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Good.
Yeah.
Extended cameo for Jay Garrick and Dr. Fate, really.
Yep.
Glad that we're involved, and as I said, I think issue 235, the cover is a bit of a lie, because there isn't a point when that actually happens, but there you go.
Just what on earth, too, did Dr. Fate think Jay was doing to conjure up these talons?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd think Dr. Fate would have maybe wondered where they came from.
Yeah,
What was the point we were even making about them? I can't remember.
So it was an unexpected side effect.
That was it. Yeah,
Dr. Fate.
Yeah, you'd think Dr. Fate would have been paying attention. And it's, let's be honest, it's quite an odd side effect. And
it's not like may cause dizziness.
Yeah, or may cause you to go to the toilet more often. It's like, because the hands seem to have some sort of agency. They seem determined to stop him. So I suppose that was maybe a side effect of what Dr. Fate was trying to do.
Perhaps a subconscious influence.
That's interesting. Dr. Fate, physician, heal thyself, I suppose would be the phrase there. Very interesting. I'm glad that Barry and Iris were sort of reunited. I'm mildly concerned at the fact that it was 2 weeks to figure it all out. That's horrendous. I really hope he phoned Hal Jordan and told him that everything's all right. And I hope he had words with Dr. Fate. It is a good thing, I think, that Dr. Fate made the effort to strike Barry with a lightning bolt at the start of the last part to bring him up to speed, because otherwise that would have been really quite awful of his two pals to be doing all that and Barry not knowing anything about it.
That would be the second time Barry's been struck by a lightning bolt to bring him up to speed.
He's good, isn't he, listeners? He's here all week. Try the veal scallops or whatever it's called.
Scallopine.
Good grief. I don't have fancy things like that for my tea listeners. I'm a mince and potatoes kind of guy, but anyway.
Culinary delights for a running thing in Carrie Bates, because it's veal scallopine for the Flash and it's beef bourguignon.
Oh, really?
For soups.
That's
I believe,
really interesting.
if I remember rightly. Yeah.
I have to watch out for that.
I'm sure it was.
That's a low.
I remember Clark wanting to take the Lois out for beef bourguignon.
Was that in Superman 276 even? I think
it might be, yeah.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah, I think it was mentioned.
I think that's their favourite, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Listeners, what's your favourite meal for an evening? What's your favourite? Anyway, it probably would have been better if Jay and Dr. Fate had been up front with Barry, and Reverse Flash ain't going away.
No. But it's great that we have two really good villains in this story.
Yes.
Bookending it.
Because we haven't seen Vandal for a very long time.
And this has brought Vandal back.
Yeah.
Because we thought he was gone.
That's right.
After that. So yeah, he is back, and he's a menace again on Earth 1.
He's an element of a phantom menace because he's visible in one and not visible in another. That was something, did that get resolved? Vandal's phantom state. When will we see him again? That'll have to...
Oh, we will cover that
So let's have a look. Mm-hmm. So the last time we see him then is when Hal was zapping him with a power ring to read his mind. So hopefully Green Lantern and Flash then got him incarcerated somewhere. Mm-hmm. We'll have to see if that gets... Because he pops up in All-Star Comics, doesn't he? That's right. Spoilers, which we'll get to hopefully this year.
Yep.
We'll have to see if there's any reference on that. Interesting. So the letters covering issue 235 are published at issue 238. So the first letter goes, Dear Editor, a close look at Vandal Savage, wanted dead and alive in Flash 235 just reaffirms that I've always said about Carrie Bates as a scripter. His flash-paced action and delightful dialogue make every adventure of the Scarlet Speedster a joy to read. This book-length tale was really something, and that's putting it mildly. And how about Irv Novik's artwork? Every issue, Irv does a phenomenal job breathing life into the story, his realistic style making the characters seem dramatically real. But let's not forget Tex Blaisdell's capable inking on the tail either. Great work, men. Yes, I must admit, I thought the artwork was very nice. There was some real touches of Carmine at points. I was very impressed. Mm-hmm. Very impressed. Having Flash separated from Iris seems a great idea, one worthy of the multi-issue treatment you have planned. If the succeeding installments are anything like this tale, it'll be a series this reader will long remember. Of course, I can't comment on the yarn without mentioning the ruthless Vandal Savage. Bringing him back was an inspiration, proving once again that any villain worth his salt will find a way to come back, even when he appears to die. And let's not forget the issue's pair of guest stars. Considering the level of quality in the issue, Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash, sure fit in, and Green Lantern always makes an able partner for the Scarlet Speedster. All in all, I must say that the Flash has come a long way since Carrie Bates took over the scripting, and I'm sure with the team he has behind him, he'll continue to surpass his achievements with each successive issue. And that's from Bart Casey, Dayton, is that Ohio?
Ohio, yes.
Tin Soldiers and Nixon's coming.
And editorial response says, you can bet we're all behind Carrie. Pushing, says Bob Rozakis.
Fantastic. Interesting that they got Hal involved in the main story, really, given he's kind of the backup character at this point. I think that was a good thing. Good to kind of have them sort of check in.
Yeah, and they did have several team-ups in the Silver Age and stuff as well, so it's quite good to see them together.
Yeah. And I don't think they teamed up with Jay appearing in the Silver Age, did they? No, the closest they got was Wally rocking up in one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Huh?
Yeah, it's just a pity that their encounter was very brief before Jay kind of went, I have something else to do now, bye, and sent them off. But, it was nice to see them, I suppose.
The next letter says, Dear Editor, the Flash seems to work well with guest stars, and in 235 he manages to stand out as a star in his own book, without crowding Green Lantern or Jay Garrick. I was pleased with the overall excellence of the issue, but I believe you could have chosen a better villain than Vandal Savage. Aside from being the worst named villain this side of Mr. Tooth Decay, he lacks any real interest, just another mad scientist, ho-hum. I really liked the kidnap number that Jay Flash did on Iris Allen. If you play this right, it could be as good as Zatanna's search for her father. It's easily the most interesting subplot I've seen in a while. Continue to do as well as 235 and soon I'll have nothing to pester you about. Almost. And that's from T.E. Pouncey, Douglas, Kansas.
Bob's response, imagine that, pesky Pouncey contemplating an end to being a pest. We must be doing something right. That's fun. That's an interesting comparison, actually, because they could have spun it out for a couple more issues and got some more Justice Leaguers involved, maybe,
true.
And it could have crossed over into the Justice League book. My only feeling was that if they'd shown that Vandal and the Reverse Flash had maybe been working together, that might have made it feel a bit more complete. But anyway.
True.
Next letter, we'll see if anyone else comments on that. Dear Editor, when I got Flash 235, I thought to myself, another Everybody But Sugar and Spike issue. Can you imagine?
I'm imagining it right now.
Me too. But despite my initial wariness of such a costume cavalcade, I did like the story. Vandal Savage is as good a villain as there is. The name, the costume, and the immortality automatically make him treacherous and interesting. The emphasis was on psychological warfare, but Vandal's use of illusion satisfied the need for action sequences as well. I was glad that Green Lantern was actually the hero, being the one to locate Vandal and discover his plan. Generally, guest stars act only as the assistant to the title hero. It was a welcome change. That's fair. Finally, the story was just a good old-fashioned boy saves girl in distress tale, despite the amount of women's liberation that has permeated comics of late. Wowza. All in all, a tremendous issue, and that's from Kurt Fowler, Jacksonville, Florida. Interesting. Very short letter from Mark Dooley of Columbus when he says, Dear Flashmen, you're worrying my mother to pieces. An old fan of J. Garrick, the Golden Age Flash, she is quite distressed that one of her favourite heroes is getting older. And Bob replies, Tell your mum not to worry, Mark. Despite the touch of grey in his hair, Jay is still in the prime of his life. So we're not going to do all the letters because there's quite a few and we've been here all day as it is. So moving forward to issue 239, talking about issue 236. And the first letter goes like this.
Dear Editor, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Flash Show, episode 236, Nowhere on the Face of the Earth. Tonight's show stars Carrie Bates, Irv Novick and Tex Blaisdell and is brought to you by Julius Schwartz. Tonight, for your viewing enjoyment, you'll see Flash battle a pair of three-fingered hands. You'll thrill to the Scarlet Speedsters of both Earths as they take on unexpected disaster in the forms of tidal waves and train wrecks. This is Carrie Bates scripting at its best. You'll enjoy the guest appearance of the Golden Age Flash and our extra special guest star, Dr. Fate. You'll be intrigued by Mike Grell's poster-like portrayal of things to come, and you'll cry as you see the all-too-human frustrations of Barry Allen as he searches for his missing wife. Those are just a few highlights of tonight's stupendous show, so sit back and relax. We'll be right back after this message.
That's a fun letter.
From Thomas Russo, Mount Kisco, New York.
Bob's reply in inverted commas, Hey, while the commercial's on, let's switch and see what's on the other channel. The next letter from, a familiar correspondent reads, Dear Editor, turning us now to another exciting episode of Flash and Friends, the super opera that asks the question, Can a simple girl from 2975 AD find true happiness in a three-part epic that no one but Carrie Bates can figure out? Not that Flash 236 was without its strong points, I was glad to see Dr. Fate included in the tale. Having some of Earth 2's other heroes involved in Jay Garrick's cover-up was such an obvious gimmick, I was afraid it might be overlooked. Doc was portrayed as a mysterious sorcerer he was created to be in the 40s. Nice work on Carrie's part. There was, however, that silly little diversion he conjured up. You're never going to make me believe that a man who can cast magic spells across dimensions can't control the side effects. No wonder mystical malpractice insurance is so high. And that's another letter from T.E. Pouncey, Douglas, Kansas.
That's a minor point, T.E., considering what our next correspondent refuses to believe, says Bob. And the next correspondent says, Dear Editor, the situation in Flash 236 is strong on melodrama, but a bit weak in common sense. Joan Garrick asks what will happen if Barry finds out his three friends are holding Iris prisoner. What on either earth does she think will happen? The implication is that Flash would A. race to his wife's side, though he knew his mere proximity would destroy her and all time and space, and B. condemn his Earth 2 friends for attempting to prevent such a catastrophe. Sorry, but my disbelief won't suspend that far. That's from Janie Allen, Weymouth, Massachusetts.
Reasonable points, I think, but Bob's response is, But you'll accept two guys able to run faster than the speed of light and a man with magical powers? Huh? No, that's fair. The final letter of this issue reads, Dear Editor, Iris can't go near Barry because of his super speed aura that surrounds him. Well, what about J Flash's aura? Got you there. And if Professor Ira West is Barry's absent-minded father-in-law, then he's Iris's father. But he should be living in 2975 AD. Are you guys getting forgetful? And that's from Glenn Gitani, do you think that is?
I think so.
Belchertown, burp. Belchertown, Massachusetts.
I think you're from Belchertown, Massachusetts.
My wee sister could live in Belchertown, Massachusetts. She built it, in fact. Anyway, editorial response from Rozakis reads,
Since Barry and Jay got their speed powers in different ways, they don't have the same type of aura. And the Wests adopt Iris when she was sent here from the future by her real parents. Hence, she has two dads. Just like Superman has Jonathan Kent and Jor-El.
That's true. Oh my, have we commented on that parallel before?
We certainly have.
Well, that's all right then.
See The Flash's Wife is a two-timer for more on that.
Can't remember what episode number it is, listeners, but we'll probably link to it at some point on the socials this week just to remind you. So, moving to issue 240.
And the first letter in the final part reads, Dear Mr. Schwartz, Mr. Rozakis et al. To put it bluntly, I'm impressed.
Until recently, I could have been classified as one of those ancient fossils who clings to the past and longs to the days when John Broome was scripting The Flash. But looking over the last 100 issues, with all the objectivity I could muster, I could see no comparison between those Broome classics and these Bates creakers. And it was sad, because I could see no good reason to keep The Flash on this tiresome, lacklustre level. But I am overwhelmed by the improvements that have taken place over the last 4 issues. There is still some way to go to get up to that consistently classical level of old, but gosh, you're on your way. The 1,000-year separation in Flash 237 was the culmination of it all. The new issue-to-issue continuity is doing wonders to help, but tying in the Reverse Flash plot threads from 233 was more than just clever. It was brilliant. The crossovers of Dr. Fate and the Golden Age Flash were pleasant, and the use of the future Earth, though it could have been developed more, was a nice bit of continuity in itself. Even the Bates dialogue and characterizations, which are too often stilted or flat, came through quite well. I hope this level of quality will continue. And that's from J. Silber, Columbus, Ohio.
Response to that one reads, our multi-part Flash adventure went over so well that we're planning to use other running plots in future tales, such as the Stacey Cornwell mystery, which comes to an end in this issue. Oh, I have to have a little look and see what that was. The next letter reads, Dear Editor, Carrie Bates writes my kind of story. Flashes 235 to 237 made up my kind of story 10 times over. Not only did we get the Flash, but he allies himself with Green Lantern in 235, and unknowingly the Golden Age Flash in 235 to 237, and Dr. Fate in 236 and 237. I especially love stories which feature a team-up with a Justice Society member. Don't we all? Because we get to do them on the podcast. Then we get top-notch supervillains. Vandal Savage in 235 uses a somewhat different weakness against his foes, the loved ones of the hero's alter egos. And Professor Zoom in 237 now appears to be strictly after Iris, and the Scarlet Speedster is standing in his way. The topper was a continuous story and the tie-in to 233, which was a complete surprise. Here, I was expecting, oh well, isn't that what you hope to do in your stories? Surprise the reader with something he doesn't expect? And that's from Warren Morrison, Commerce, Texas.
Bob Rozakis says, right Warren, in fact, Carrie Bates often does unexpected things in his script, and they certainly do surprise ye editorial staff.
Sometimes we do surprising things on the Earth 2 podcast, don't we?
Sometimes we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't, but sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do. Stay tuned.
And the final letter we're going to cover is, again, from an old favourite. It goes like this. Dear Bob, the 1,000-year separation was nicely handled in the old Broome style, but the plot itself had a few deficiencies. In his last Reverse Flash story, I began to suspect that Carrie Bates was getting his villains mixed up. And this confirmed it. Professor Zoom does not go around falling in love with women he's hardly even met. That's Captain Cold's thing. Secondly, even given the motive, it was a very slipshod plan. Didn't Zoom realise that if 20th century Earth had been destroyed, there would never have been a 25th century Reverse Flash? And that's quite sensible argument. It's from Richard Morrissey from Framingham, Massachusetts.
Yes, big fan of Rich. Rich, if you're listening, get in touch. If you're still around. Editorial response reads, we must point out, Rich, that it was Professor Zoom who tried to steal Iris away from Barry on their wedding day. Absolutely. So he hasn't hardly met her. We didn't do that story, but maybe we should do it as a flashback.
We might do.
We might do.
No pun intended.
Oh, I see what you did there. Also assuming that the past, present and future all exist simultaneously, what had already happened in the 25th century would not have disappeared as a result of Zoom's plan. The entire time scheme would cease to exist all at once, but that still makes Richard's point valid.
It does indeed.
Anyway.
Reverse Flash doesn't always think these things through. I don't know who gave him that professorship. Possibly himself.
Yes, he's just mad with it, isn't he?
Gosh. He is.
Well then, listeners, thank you for bearing with us. That's why we had a longer break over New Year than usual to prepare and get ready for recording this one.
Some fantastic letters there. And if you want to write to us with a fantastic letter, you can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media because David has always got some fantastic stuff prepared for you. And it'll be winging its way to our Facebook, Instagram and Twitter accounts. On Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth 2 Podcast, and on Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it is the number 2 for all of our socials.
It certainly is, yes. Quite a few foreign covers and a few pages of original art to delight you with this time, so get your printers fired up and your colouring pencils ready if you want to have a shock colouring them in yourself. As I always say at this point, if you're feeling generous, you could go to wherever it is you receive your podcasts and leave us a positive review. That would be lovely. Or you could go to our coffee page, which you can find in our link tree, and buy Peter the price of a beverage as he returns to Cafe Nero over the next week to edit this in time for it being out next Thursday.
It's going to take longer than a week.
Jokes.
On that bombshell, I've been Peter.
I've been David. Thank you for joining us again in 2025. We'll see you soon again on
The Earth 2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
And we have an opening splash image which shows Vandal Savage. Savage?
Vandal Savage.
Vandal Sausage.
And as the fearsome visage of Vandal Savage fades from... visage fade to grey, sorry.
I know, I was thinking that soon.
Yeah.
Yep.
What in blazes was that red blur?
Another guy says,
Almost ripped the briefcase out of my hand.
and a disturbed blonde lady exclaims,
I don't know whether my eyes are blurry or bleary.
the best Gwen Stacy impression I've ever heard.
I was going to go southern, but then I gave the middle guy a southern twang, so
Right.
I decided against it.
Okay, it's fine, it's fine.
It was brilliant. The crossovers... Oh, I've gone all Swiss McCoy now.